Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Tiny little Katie, very large too. This is a conversation, is an experiment to update everybody on Ways into Wonder. And I have invited Katie, who is absolutely magic, to be my conversation partner and to jump in with questions and just to keep me vibing. I'm going to try and keep this to under 20 minutes, might even be 10. But this is an initial one to basically welcome people into what is going on because everybody who's watching this has in some way already been a cheerleader, a champion, an ally, a curious thought partner, has begun to kind of support this magical vision in some way. And I just realized I'm having all of these separate conversations, and I just wanted to do a sort of hybrid update to go, this is what's going on. My intention is to do this weekly, but we'll see. And so, yeah. And Katie, do you want to? I know you're tiny and nobody can see you.
I am a gnome in this.
Is there actually this talking creature? Do you want to just say hi because you're here and you're
Yeah. Hi. Thanks for welcoming me in.
um so yeah, you're being my kind of sponge buffer, any number of different things around this. So I'm just going to jump in by
Go
saying,
for it.
um, Ways into Wonder now exists. It's a not-for-profit set up in the UK, and it is the vehicle to create all of the experiences that will ultimately lead towards the big vision, which is somewhere in Europe is a tree. A tree.
Here it is.
There it is. Uh, a tree is somewhere. It's already old, and so it's like there's a path between where we are now and where that tree is that hasn't yet revealed itself, and that tree is somewhere next to or in the grounds of some sort of, I think, a monastery or a hamlet or a village or something, which is ultimately going to be the physical location where all this wonder has a home and where experiences and creativity and spiritual exploration all converge in this place of wonder. Not very articulate, I'm realizing as I say this, but I'm sure we'll get there. And so basically we're in this process now of Ways into Wonder UK existing as the initial stage one organization, which is for everything to do with the research, to do with the partnership projects, which I'm going to come to do with like the planning, the storytelling, the agreements, the creative kind of practices, the development of the organizational structures, the legal stuff, the financial stuff, um, and in terms of place-based experiences, my boat, who many
Hmm.
met, is also
Beautiful
now
boat.
officially part of the team, and I have uh, asked her, and she has agreed to be part of the gang creating experiences. So, one of the things is that I'm also going to be curating individual artist residencies on my boat where I can hide things for you and
Hmm.
curate different bits and pieces. And that's got its own document. So, Ways into Wonder UK exists, and this is an opportunity for me to catch you up on what we're up to. Do you have any thoughts, Katie?
Um, I love the way you describe the tree and the journey towards the tree. And it would be really helpful to get more clarity around this journey to the tree. So you've talked about these different experiences. You've talked about the one person artist residency experiences on your boat. And I'm wondering if you could speak into any more about these partnerships that you're developing, because I know you're having all these great calls with different people, and somehow they probably need to know what you're talking about with each of them and what's coming through.
Thank you. So there is this summary document, which does have a tiny little bit of detail about each one, as in it's got a one-liner and then it's got a paragraph in an appendix about each one. So I will just run through them all because each one is a different way into wonder. The idea is once we have this magical monastery with the tree, it only makes sense if there's all sorts of partners already working together and using the place, potential partners who will come and be there for long and short term projects,
Mm.
people who will help make it happen. So what I'm doing right now is experimenting with lots of different ways into wonder. So number one, but most of them are to do with analog, in-person, place-based experiments. One
Mhm.
of them is not. One of them is about ways into wonder through analog artworks that can activate wonder. For example, the tree. So, what I've realized is in trying to tell the story of this project, it has not been possible to do it on a website. So, I realize I have all these incredible artists in my world. And so, one of the collaborations is about telling the story through a bunch of different physical objects. So, the tree, for example,
Mm.
um, where instead of sending somebody a PowerPoint, instead, they receive a tree in the post.
Love it.
And they may get an invitation to meet me under a tree. And I may or may not take them on a magic portal walk. And depending on where they are in the world, they may or may not receive a bespoke, tiny, 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 tiny letter, which is one of the other partners in the projects is called Lee Redmond. Lee Redmond is amazing. She's based in San Francisco. She is many things, but one of the things she is an expert on gifts and giving as a creative practice, which
Mm.
is central to so much of this project because everything's about gifting. And she wrote the book on it. Like it's the actual manual. Sorry. Excuse me.
Are we doing a side note? This is for you, gift giving as a way of life. Wow, beautiful.
She's brilliant. And so she is also the creator of the world's smallest postal service. You can and if you decide to play with this with me with us, one of the things that will be happening in the sequence of the analog artworks will be there will be a letter so small that the font is in 3.5 and it comes in an envelope the size of your fingernail with a magnifying glass from me.
Incredible.
So there's going to be tiny, tiny, tiny letters. There's going to be tiny trees. There's going to be Lisa from Glass Cathedrals, who is amazing, has offered to make for when we get, for example, funding. For anybody who would like to give us £20,000, please, thank you. You will also be receiving a tiny little kind of a dome, yay big, inside which there will be a tree and a tiny, tiny you. She was going to make bespoke. You see the size of this? This is Jamila Jamil. Bespoke, teeny tiny human beings sitting under the tree. So that's what you can look forward to if you want to get involved. So, like the sequence of experiences, I'm just going to go on a slight sidebar here. It's not actually a sidebar, it's what inspired it. When I ran iShine, which was my not for profit back in the dawn of time. Wait, yes, I am recording. I had a creative partner called Roz, who will hopefully be watching this. Hello, Potato. She and I call each other Potato. Roz created this thing that we still to this day pretend wasn't her. So I don't know who I'm really talking about. But one day there was a phone call in the office, and my assistant at the time answered the phone, and there was a voice who said, "Is TU there?" I was out of the room, and she said, "Get TU to look at this website," and then hung up. And I came back in and my assistant said, I don't know who that was, but somebody just said, you need to look at this website. I was like, that's weird. Let's look. And we went on the website and it was a blank white page with just the text. If you want to play, tie a green ribbon to the bench outside your flat.
Amazing.
So I went to a haberdasher's and I bought the nicest green ribbon and I tied it to the leg of the bench outside my flat and I waited. And after that, 6 months of clues ensued, like including notes in the pinboard, the notice board of like the corner shop, including things that were hidden in my house, like in my book collection, including things that were in the eyeshine lockup, including like a text from a phone number I didn't recognize telling me to go to an address I didn't know and go straight into the side gate, into the garden, and in the shed to find a balloon and to pop the balloon. And inside the balloon was the next instruction. Like that went on and on for 6 months. So that is more inspiring to me and denotes the whole point of this whole project than a website ever could. So,
Mm.
one way into wonder is all of these people who are going to create non-geographically located, art-based clues, storybooks, provocations, miniature things arriving in the post. That's project number one in collaboration with extraordinary artists. Number two, which could intersect with number one, is I I'm playing with a lovely ally of the project called Simon, um, about making iterative, reciprocal experiences of wonder. So we just had this conversation today where it was going to be a group of four, but we're now going to make it three. So A will design a moment for wonder for B. B
Mhm.
will design a moment of wonder for C, and C will design a moment of wonder for A.
Okay.
And so that moment of wonder could be one of the examples in Lee Redmond's book, where she created an experience for somebody where she took a Mary Oliver poem and she wrote it in hopscotch, each square of the hopscotch being one word, each chunk of hopscotch being one stanza. And she wrote hopscotches all the way from her friend's house to a garden that they loved. So they came out of their front door and found a Mary Oliver poem that took them all the way from their home to this garden. That's It doesn't have to be that elaborate. It doesn't have to be that the person is absent during the experience, but something where you get to sneak around and create an experience of wonder for the recipient. And then you have one created for you too.
Mm.
We're experimenting with doing an in-person version in London. I'm going to bring it to my Dublin crew. I'm going to invite them. I'm warning you, Dublin Coven, if you're watching this, I'm going to bring this to you. You're going to be my first guinea pigs. And I'm going to experiment with a remote version to see if it can be done via Zoom, because I would like everybody who's involved in the project to both give and receive an experience of wonder as kind of an initiatory practice, just for the joy, and also so that I can refine the instructions and get clearer on how to make sure that that whole process happens in a sort of easy way. I like the loop being quite closed so that there's accountability and communication. And I'm also open to it becoming a sort of template that could be utilized once people have got the practice. They go, I want to do this within my family, or I want to do this within my creative collaboration, or I want to do this with a it could potentially be tested and templated out. It
Mm.
could
Can
also,
I
yeah,
can I reflect back for a moment?
yeah.
Because what I'm hearing is that the awe and wonder is interwoven with everyone that's coming into contact with this ways into wonder. So the magic of it is that you're not doing a standard presentation and investor deck type, this is what we need. It's like how to get people to embody and experience it. And then it just keeps spreading. And I love what you say about these things, maybe even being replicated within families. So it's just spreading out the joy and the awe and the wonder.
Yes, correct. Because also, I want this to be something. The mistake I made with Eyeshine was I made something that was dependent upon my energy, presence. Like it was too, when I hit burnout, it stopped basically.
Mm.
And so I want this to have a different life force and for there to be a kind of activation of experiments that could potentially have a life of their own. So both of the ones that I've described are not necessarily geographically based, although I do like the idea of doing, for example, a London version, Dublin version, Spanish version, Californian version, Australian version. Like there are many different ways in which, if it could work, it's nice to actually have an in-person piece. So the
Hmm.
current structure around that is we're going to have a discovery call for anybody that wants to join on the evening UK time of the 4th of June, 7 to 8 p.m. on the 4th of June. If you want to find out more about that, please come. Um, and then there'll be an in-person version in my boat in London for 3 people, plus me and Simon, the following week, and then a kind of show and tell bit a month later to go, what did
Yes.
you do? How did you do it? So, say, for example, you did do something where you did hopscotch poems. We're then going to go out in the street and leave a hopscotch poem somewhere. Do you know, like, so it's
Mhm.
like potentially that's that one. 4th of June, 7 to 8 p.m. UK time. It's just an open Zoom to anybody in this gang who wants to potentially play. Still refining the instructions as part of it's all experiment. Number three, um, this is slightly more tenuous because it requires a physical location, which we lack. But as you may or may not know, I no, you all know this. I received an Odyssey 2 years ago where a group of 15 international artists made a 36-hour experience for and about me, in which, amongst other things, I went to this place in 25 years. They gave me a dinner in 2069 where I was invited to sit at the table in this magical place. And that happened to be in France. And had the penny drop where I understood that the people who'd made this extraordinarily generous gift for me had actually received in the making. I hadn't
Mhm.
understood that until that moment. I was like, oh, when you give something, you receive, which was, and I was like, this whole thing is about gifting experiences. So the model of having a multidisciplinary group of artists create an experience as a gift is
Mm.
an Odyssey-like structure, but I want there to be a hand-picked group of maybe 6 artists, and I want to span different disciplines. So I'd like there to be a musician, a writer. I mean, it doesn't have to be this. Like, for
Mm.
example, uh maybe somebody who makes spaces like a treehouse builder, maybe somebody who is a food person, maybe somebody who is all about movement, maybe like a number of different things. In each one, I like the idea of each one bringing their own individual thing that they're working on, but as a result of their physical proximity to each other over, say, 2 weeks, maybe three, that there's also an experienced designer, somebody like me, but it doesn't have to be me, who can use their gifts as a palette from which to create an experience for somebody else. So you go, I'd like you to write the narrative story writer. I'd like
Mhm.
you to write a sequence of poems that we can come back to. Composer, I'd like you to have an opening theme that keeps just weirdly playing all the time around this person. Food person, I want you to discover what their favorite meal was when they were 7, and we're going to make
Mhm.
that. Space person, we're going to discover what their childhood den was like when they were little, and we're going to make a massive version of it. Do you see what I mean? And then the experience designer will lead them through an experience. So that one is like a residential artist residency with honestly like, but I like the idea of the individuals equally having their own practice. That requires a physical location and a bit of money. And that one I want to make happen, but that I don't know exactly when. We need 20-ish grand to make that one happen. If anybody would like to donate £20,000, that would be marvelous. That's number three, because that's the kind of thing that's going to happen when we've got the whole place. Number four, death. As you know, Katie, death is a portal into wonder, as amongst many other ways of being extraordinary, as a way of waking up to other and to heart and to all these things. There is a wonderful woman in Australia called Amy Firth, who you have communicated with, haven't you? I love her so much. He and I are hatching a plan to develop living funerals as gifts. So
Incredible.
to create an experience honoring the person's life story, honoring their community, honoring the whatever. And they don't have to be dying. Like,
Mm.
this is something that doesn't necessarily even lend itself to people who are actually in ill health, because it could be quite an intense thing to put somebody through if they are, for example, really in pain. Like, we're all going to have a funeral one day. So you can have a living funeral now if you want it. So I've been collaborating with her on figuring that out. I would like to go to Australia to do a pilot with her in September, October for about 6 weeks. Financial support welcome to make that happen. And I've also connected her with one of the most wonderful people I know, Jeremy, if you're watching this, who is Australian, spends his time there, and who I think could be a candidate to be the recipient of a living funeral. But she's also got somebody else in mind. Also, I met with Rupert Callender, who is the guy who I studied with, who I learned from, who is the radical undertaker who's based in Devon, who wrote a brilliant book called What Remains, and who has taught me everything I know about how to create funerals. And I suggested that I gift him a funeral.
Hmm.
So he's slightly nervously said maybe. But so death as a way into wonder is another piece around this. And within that, there's also the conversation with Sobonfu Some, who was one of my teachers, who talked about in her tradition in the Dagara tribe, their funerals included the reenactment of the life of the person. So like
Wow.
a community theatre piece where, and it doesn't have to include that, but I like the idea of turning it into something more than just you're standing around a coffin and reading poems. It's like, let's make it honoring the life story of the person. So that's death. Kids, intergenerational. um I Shine that I ran years ago was just about this. It was about wonder as children being the activating point, because if you're a parent, and I'm not a parent, you have a kind of a window into that possibility by virtue of your child being the person who is brilliant at wonder, and they live in your house and you
Hmm.
can go to them for master classes. So and I did years and years of this. Like, that's a very well developed piece that has been dormant for a long time, but I'd like to bring it back because it works.
Hmm.
And I also like the idea of making it intergenerational, not just children and adults, but also grandparents or elders. So to kind of incorporate a next layer of wonder being offered, received, transmitted, understood through um, child-led experiences. Essentially, there's a journey to get to the child-led part. They wouldn't just be in charge, but there is a journey to get to the place where the adults can soften their control and begin
Yep.
to recognize. I mean, you're a master of this, and you live with two little geniuses. God. So in that one, there's this massive body of work in iShine, which was this fully funded lottery project, which I ran for years. There is a an initial potential partnership with the Story Keepers Guild, which is a wonderful uh, early stage offshoot of Odyssey Works, where it's children aged between, I think, 7 and 12. I think is that that's the range, and exploring how to give them the role of being story keepers in the world. So understanding story, becoming curious about story, and then also activating a trusted adult in their life, not a parent, so like a friend of the family or a godparent, who becomes their point of contact for this. So it's like basically there's a pilot that happened last summer in America, which I did not attend, and there's another one happening this July in Wales, which I will work on, and I'll be working on that as a sort of potential partnership in going forward. But it's not quite clear yet if what they have planned is open to the child-led part, which is my strong ethos. It's currently it's quite structured around adults creating an experience that children are led through, where they are initiated as story keepers. The back end of it, where the children become the imagination engine, hasn't
Mhm.
yet been iterated. So for me, that one feels like I'm volunteering. It's going to be beautiful. We're in Caimabon, which is a hobbit village in Wales in July. It's stunning. And it's like, how can I, it's an exploration of a partnership.
Mm.
Interfaith. I have been having conversations with Casper to Kyle, who is the one of the co-founders of the Sacred Design Lab, which comes out of Harvard Divinity. And Casper's amazing and has created this extraordinary platform called Spiritual Innovators, which is for people who are community builders. It's slightly American centric, just partly
Hmm.
because their community is that, but they have these incredible calls with all of these extraordinary people who come from all sorts. Like yesterday, I was on a call. There's a chaplain at a punk rock festival. It's like that's, do you know what I mean? Like they're just
Love
like
it.
really interesting characters,
Mm.
people who are doing all sorts of community building and figuring out their own challenges. There was a guy on that call who's set up something called the San Francisco Contemplarium, which is just again like a community based inquiry into different kinds of meaning making and wisdom. And so for me, wonder is also invoked by the spiritual inquiry, by faith-based understanding, by wisdom tradition. So I would like there to be, this one hasn't really, again, this one requires a physical location ideally, bringing together a community out of that group and
Hmm.
inviting, let's say, 12 people to come and spend a week, say in a monastery, and exchange their own ways into wonder. So I'd like there to be like an exchange of different religious rituals or different religious teachings or different non-religious teachings that all have that. So there's the sort of the sacred bit. um and then the last one, which is as yet the least formed but the one that has my heart, because it's the edge for me, is non-human. I want to design for baby donkeys. And
Oh.
I want animals first.
Mhm.
Animals as a way into wonder, but also place-based, nature place-based, which is slightly hazier for me. I'm not quite sure what that looks like, but animals. There's a potential. There's an opening conversation with a wonderful woman called Saskia von Diest, who I met when I did this big event last year in Slovenia, who has something called eco fluency. And that is, she teaches the ability for us to connect with our own understanding of how to communicate with a more than human. So, how do you attune to a different sort of intuitive understanding? And she does really amazing nature connection sort of trainings. There's also a brilliant, crazy project by a scientist I know who worked on using AI to encode the language of rats in the New York subway system. And they now have a very detailed understanding of how all the rats communicate. So that's so like that one's got less proper structure. So the animals or the non-human and the interfaith have the least. I've had initial conversations, but that's all. All of the others are in a certain sort of momentum with the artists, the one-to-one, the children, and the death being the ones that have the most energy. And then behind that, the artist residency, the animals, and the interfaith being lower down the developmental thing. And I know we've probably had enough time.
Well, you've really clearly covered all the different areas and the different partnerships that are happening and the exciting different ways in which we're emerging into wonder. Is there anything that you want to close with to this wonderful group of humans?
Um, the ask is now for somebody to jump in and do an audacious thing. I'm going, this is nuts. Let me give you some cash. I would like there to be there is some structural stuff. Everybody's doing everything for free. Like literally not one penny has been spent or paid. And I've got an amazing organizational kind of support network who are again volunteering. I've got people who are helping me to create project management stuff who are volunteering. There's a lot of goodwill and there's a lot of generosity, and I would like this to be abundantly funded. So the next step really is to invite. I've done a kind of rough costing of each of those pilots. They fall between 10 and 20 grand.
Mhm.
Some could be slightly less. Then there's also the organizational setup stuff, which again, we need some more professional help. Like I need some legal advice. I need some organizational stuff. I need some things to happen. We've put a budget together about 7 grand. And then there's also separately to that, the place-based piece, which is phase 2, needs to be activated with a budget for some advice, some R&D trips. There's 5 different places I would like to visit and speak to the founders and understand how they make it work. There's one in Greece, there's one in Italy, there's one in France, there's one in Slovenia, and there's one in Finland. And there's others
Mhm.
I'd like to check out. But there are physical places that are doing things that are comparable to this, and I'd like to go and learn from them. And then there's just the project running costs, like just the sort of organizational admin. It'd be great to be able to pay the person who's doing the admin with me. It's like the money is needed, structure is needed, and the phase 2 part, I'm looking at crazy places for sale. They're amazing. I'm assuming this isn't going to be how it happens. I don't think it's going to be like, let's spend 300 grand on a fixer upper in Portugal. I think it's going to be a different kind of, I think the path to it is going to be surprising. Could be collaborative with somebody who's already got somewhere. I don't know. But I do want to keep the momentum going so that there is also the baby donkeys in the tree. It's all about baby donkeys.
And on that note,
Cool. I'm going to stop recording and I'm going to do this again. Like I'll update you with a shorter one and get in touch. You're great. I'm going to stop recording. Bye bye.